On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with a returned survivor named Kelly, and Kelly was married to a physically abusive narcissist. It's a story of brainwashing, isolation, feeling embarrassed for staying, and the difficulty in leaving for good. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Kelly, I just first want to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, if you have not left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., please leave us a 5-star written review, as it helps out the show a lot when it comes to rankings. Now, if you have not been to our website recently at narcissistapocalypse.com and you want to be on our show, at the top of the page, there's a button that says guest form. You click on that button, takes you to the guest form, you fill it out, and away we will go. We will start the process right there. But another way to be on our show is to also go to narcissistapocalypse.com. Side of the page, there's a floating button around that says send voicemail. That is for our Letters to My Narcissist compilation episode. So if you want to read a letter to your narcissist, that it's an unsent letter, and you just want to send it in to us by reading it yourself, that button, you press it, it records up to 5 minutes. You press it twice, it records up to 10. You don't want to read the letter yourself, and you still want to be part of the show, send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com. Me or my old pal Melissa will read your letter for you. Just put in the subject line when you send that email, Letters to My Narcissist. Other things going on at our website. We are offering high conflict parenting courses at narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. We have partnered with an online parenting company called Online Parenting, and many of the courses we are offering are created by Bill Eddy, who is an expert. I say he is an expert in dealing with these individuals in court, and now he's helped create many parenting courses to help you through divorce and to help support your children too. These courses are the most widely recognized courses by family courts across the country. So if you want to support the show and are looking for guidance, please do go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. Now, what else do I got for you here today? Our Patreon, everyone. Yes, we have a Patreon, and we started a support group on the Patreon. We have episodes that never made it to air on there, stuff with me and Melissa, and, you know, we're doing new stuff on there all the time. So something that we're actually going to be doing this week, part of our support group, it's not technically a support group this Wednesday, but we're just going to be doing a guided meditation for about an hour. So if that interests you, you know, sometimes we don't always want to talk about the stuff and we need to relax. So, you know, when you sign up for our Patreon, which is only $5 a month, you get the shows that never made it to air, some extra stuff with me and Melissa, former guest type stuff, and you get, you get a support group every Saturday night, every other Wednesday night, and now on the other Wednesdays, you're going to get guided meditation live through our Zoom. And so much more. We also added our own forum board this week, an attachment, so you can ask questions on there. It's private. We're adding much more stuff on that forum board. This way you guys can communicate with each other. Some of our former guests are on there. So, you know, we're kind of creating, you know, all of this stuff only for $5 a month that helps supports the show, keeps us free. And that's that. So now before we get started, I just want to say about this episode, there are a little bit of sound issues. in this episode as far as sometimes the phone kind of went in and out, but I did my best to clean that up, as well as there is noise kind of going on. Kelly was, she has kids, and she's doing things. The kids aren't on there, but she was preparing stuff in the kitchen while we were on the phone. So you might hear some clanging of dishes and maybe things being prepared. You might hear like an oven kind of being clicked on and stuff like that. But besides that, this was I just want to thank Kelly for being on the show for the second time. She was already been on once before. I state in this episode what the date is, so you can go back and listen. I'll also put it in the show description. And, this is a really interesting story, for people that have gone through intimate partner violence and the difficulty of staying away. This has a lot of that in there. It's emotional. I've quieted down parts for people when I thought there might have been too graphic of description of the violence. So I've done my best to kind of take all of that out there. So people won't get as triggered. Just again, it might be a triggering episode for everyone because we do discuss this stuff. And that's it. So thank you, and thank you to Kelly. And once again, I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Here is my conversation interview with Kelly. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Well, you are the first return guest we've ever had on the show. And, after our episode last time out, which I think was the October 12th episode, you sent me an email the next day saying, I knew you had two relationships, but you said the first one is more interesting than the second one, and the second one was a pretty interesting story. So, I always say like, just keep on bugging me and send me an email to remind me that we still need to record. And you sent me an email, thank goodness, and we're here. So thank you for being here with me. And I'm just gonna get out of my way and your way. Kelly, the floor is now yours.
Yeah, so I think that the first husband, I think he had more time with me, and he did do a lot, as you'll hear, like a lot more things. I mean, he did the thing that made him sound, I guess, least worse was because he didn't actually try to kill me for insurance money. It started from the beginning, I guess. My brother went through a divorce right before Hurricane Katrina, and it was hard on him. I mean, he took it hard. So I was living a couple of states away with my parents, and I moved back down there, I guess, to live with him since his house no longer had kids in it or anything else, and his wife was gone, and also help split some of the bills because, divorce is expensive. And so I moved down there. I was in my early 20s, whatever. And then like a couple of weeks after I moved down, Hurricane Katrina hit. So, boom, I automatically had a job. I started working for Volunteers of America and just trying to stay busy with that. And in the meantime, I had reconnected with some of my old friends because I had been living out of state for a couple of years. So I reconnected with them, and one of them, she had a baby from a one-night stand. And somehow her and the guy decided to try to make it work. So she moved in with him. She comes from a bad home life. And basically he moves her in, and then he just rejects her the whole time. I mean, he wants to be there for his son, but he just treated her really badly. But anyways, she was feeling really down and out. I'm in my early 20s. What better cure for feeling down and out than your best friend to take you out on the town for the night? Let's go have some drinks and cut loose. So I took her out that night, and we went to this place that I personally never liked. It was like a country western bar, which I'm not completely into, but it was her usual hangout. So I took her there, and we're standing there with our first couple of drinks, and we're looking down there, and I see one of the guys I went to high school with, and next to him some tall guy with messy-looking hair. couldn't even see his face past his hair. And she's like, oh, my God, who is that guy? He is so fine, blah, blah, blah. Isn't that Jason that you went to school with? And I said, yeah. I said, I'll go introduce you to him. I said, I'll go talk to Jason, and then we'll talk to him. I mean, obviously they're together. So we walk down there, and I say, hey, Jason, what's up, blah, blah, blah. And we start talking, and I said, who's your friend? My friend wants to meet your friend. And so the guy turns around, and I said, hey, what's your name? He tells me his name. I said, my friend wants to meet you. And he's like, no, I want to meet you. Who are you? And basically, for the rest of the night, he just basically dragged me around everywhere. It was really weird because he was like telling people automatically I was his girlfriend. And we had just met. I don't even think I knew his last name at that point. My friend got very upset. She got heartbroken. She ended up catching a ride home because she already was dealing with so much rejection at home. And then here I go, and she apparently falls in love at first sight with this tall guy, and I end up unintentionally getting him. So anyways, we go out for the rest of the night. We head down, and we headed down out of town. We were in Baton Rouge, and some of the bars at this point, it took a while for everything to open back up in New Orleans, but some of the bars were open, ampersands and stuff like that. So we went down to ampersands, and we were out all night. Anyways, next day, I slept in, blah, 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 returned to regular life. And he's already calling my phone, immediately, within minutes of being, apart from each other. It just seems that way, as I recall it, 'cause this is way back in the early 2000s. And even down to the next night when in your early 20s, you go out almost every night of the week, or at least I did, me and my friends did. And so the next time we were supposed to go out, I was supposed to go out with my best friend, Amber. And I had already made plans. I was headed over there, and he starts blowing up my phone. Hey, where are you? What are you doing? I'm like, I'm going out having a girls' night. You're not invited. The way that I was used to the dating game, most guys, when you went out on a first date with them or had met them that night, it took a few days for them to text you. It wasn't like they started ambushing you. Where are you going to be tonight? Where are you going to be? And it was like that. Then he showed up where I ended up telling him where we were going to be, but no, it's a girls' night. This is what we're doing. He shows up. So that's pretty much how the first of our relationships, he just smothered me with his presence until I started liking him. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like every time I looked up, I had a text message. Every time I went somewhere, he was there. It was like, maybe this is meant to be. He's such a nice guy.
At the beginning, what about him got you hooked into him where you were like, hook, line, and sinker, this guy is for me?
Honestly, he was an attractive guy, but he wasn't overly attractive, but he was enough. And with the gift of gab he had, the way he had a way of talking you almost like a snake charmer. He could make you feel like the most beautiful, glamorous, amazing woman in the world. And he was the gift to you. He could make you feel like everything. And then he can obviously make you feel like nothing too.
So he had the gift of gab. He was just the most charismatic person you'd ever met.
Ever in my life to this day. I've never met anybody like that. Never. And lie, and people believe him. And just so he has this presence about him. It's now I see through it, and I look at him, and I don't see it at all anymore, actually, when I look at him. But back then, he was almost captivating to me. He, like I said, he wasn't overly attractive. He was attractive, but not overly attractive to where it was like, oh my God, I got to have this guy like my friend was. But it was more about his presence. Anyways, he became, part of our circle almost. And the next thing I want to touch on is one of my first red flags from him. We had gone out one night, and we ended up at my friend Amber's house because she was my going out buddy, and she lived in Baton Rouge. So it was just easy to sleep over her house. Well, he and I went over there for kind of like an after party or whatever. And after that, I passed out. I had work the next day. I was tired. She said, go take my guest bedroom, go to sleep. Well, apparently he ended up staying there and hitting on her. And as a good friend would, she rejected him, and ended up telling me, hey, your new boy, he hit on me. He was trying to fill me up. So I confronted him about it. I said, look, I don't want anything else to kill my best friend. No. He tells me that no, he would never do that. In fact, he needs to tell me that my best friend has a secret. She sells herself on Craigslist, and he's seen her ads on Craigslist and Backpage, and he can show me these ads, but he doesn't want to do that to me because it would, destroy my opinion of her. But I really need to back away from her because she's trouble and she's hiding things. So then I got to thinking, well, could it be? I don't know. I've been knowing this girl since 6th grade, but I guess. And I asked her, do you do this? Is this what you're doing? And she said no and this and that. But for some reason at the time, I don't know why, but I believed him. So I started spacing myself from her and from pretty much all of my friends because it seemed like every single one of them, he found issue with them. And he was living with a roommate, and I would just go out with him and go sleep over there. Let me see where I'm at. I had to make notes so I could keep up this time so I don't miss anything. He basically had isolated me by this point, but we had been together for a while. And we went out one night with just his friends, like 3 of his guy friends and me in my car. So I was like, look, I'm not up for going out, late tonight. I'm not up for staying all night and going bar to bar. I want to go home after this. Let's go home. And he was like, no, I still feel like going out with my friends, blah, blah, blah. We're going to take so-and-so's car, and we'll just bring you and your car back to my house, and you can crash. Well, I go back. I crash. I don't even think 2 things about it. I wake up the next morning to go to my car to go back to my brother's house, and I look, my car is not there. He has taken my car out without telling me anything, like 2 hours away from where we were, to go out and party all night and drink. I started blowing up his phone. He would not respond. Finally, he said, we're on our way back. So-and-so only has a 2-seater car. You should have known that we were taking your car. I told you, you were just too drunk to remember. And I promise you, to this day, I know I did not give him permission to take my car. So I was very upset. And when he got back, I was packing, I had started leaving things at his place. I was packing all my stuff up, and I was done with this dude yet again. And somehow he had the gift of gab. He could talk you into anything. I mean, he could tell you your hair was black and your hair was clearly blonde, and you would believe it. And he talked me into staying with him. Well, with that, Valentine's Day was coming up, and I had always wanted an English bulldog. My whole life, I wanted an English bulldog, but they're like $1,500, and I couldn't afford that. He had decided that particular day when he was trying to make up with me, oh, also, by the way, we're going to go pick up your English bulldog for Valentine's Day. So I was like, oh, my God, I get an English bulldog. And I was so excited. Well, sure enough, like the next day, we did go get an English bulldog. I ended up getting a little female one. She was solid white. She was the love of my life. She's deceased now. And she was the cutest puppy. Well, I tried to bring her home. My brother was like, look, I'm a cat person. You're not bringing this dog into my house. You better find a place to keep it. And so I ended up having to leave my English bulldog at his place with his roommate because they didn't have a pet. So what I do is every day after work, I would stop by there and feed my dog. Well, one day, right after I get the dog, and this guy's already broken my trust quite a few times, I drive up over there to go feed my dog, and I notice he's not there, and neither is my dog. And so I'm walking around trying to figure out what's going on, and he drives up with the upstairs, like, tenant. He lived in, like, a duplex type thing, but it was the bottom floor was an apartment, and the top floor was an apartment, and it was like a pretty girl that lived up there, and I never even knew that they even talked. I didn't even know they knew each other I mean, I'd never seen him talk. He pulls up with her, and they are clearly disheveled, like something's been going on. And so I march over there, and I start chewing everyone out. Give me my dog. What are you doing? And I broke up with him, and I walk away. And I'm like, I'm going to have to talk my brother into letting this dog come back. This dog is like everything to me. Anyway, somehow or another, he comes chasing me down. No, I love you. You mean everything to me. I don't love her. I didn't have a ride to go get a cup of coffee. She took me to get a cup of coffee. Oh, and he gave me this huge sob story. And then he flips it and he says, hey, you know what? In fact, you hurt her feelings because here she was kind enough to give me a ride to go get a cup of coffee. And you sit there accusing her of, calling her names and accusing her of cheating with me. And now she's probably upstairs crying. You need to go apologize to her. And he kept on and kept on and kept on. And I ended up, this is like how good he was at this. I ended up that night knocking on her door and apologizing to this girl. and I know for a fact that this wasn't what he was telling me it was. Now looking back at it, back then I thought, oh, he loves me. He wouldn't love anybody else. Look at how obsessed he is with me. He can't live without me. Anyways, another huge red flag during that time. I do recall on a separate instance we ended up getting into an argument. And that was the first time he put his hands on me. He actually grabbed me by the back of my head and the back of my shirt and drug me out of his apartment and threw me out on the ground outside. And I was so brainwashed at this point. I sat on my car begging him to take me back, apologizing to him. And even at that point, I do recall, I don't know what I did wrong. But anyways, moving on, basically all of a sudden there's issues between him and his roommate. He lived with a guy, but he's giving me so much trouble, and he's inviting men over all night. He's not paying his half of the rent and this and that, just like making up stuff about the guy. And as far as I knew, the guy came from money, and he seemed to always be pretty good about taking care of things. So it just seems kind of odd to me. But he's like, you know what? We've got to go get an apartment together, blah, blah, blah. I had never lived with a guy before marriage. So I was like, no, I can't. He's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll get you an apartment, and I'll just come stay sometime until I find a place. And I said, okay. So he gets me a one-bedroom apartment. Finally, I can be with my dog. And I start living there. Well, it never was me just living there because he immediately moved in. I mean, that was never even a question. So right after we get in, the apartment is literally 4 blocks from my job, which was amazing. Basically, right after we moved in, I don't even think it was 3 weeks later, I found out that I was pregnant. And I almost couldn't believe it. I thought I had the flu or something. I took like four different tests. I have endometriosis. I didn't even think it was possible. But I was pregnant. And so I was like, well, I've got to tell him. So I told him. He went crazy. He told me I did this on purpose. I was trying to purposely make him marry me when we had never even discussed marriage at that point, I don't believe. Well, we had, but it had been mostly on his end. I did not purposely get pregnant was the point, and he was sitting there again and blaming me for it. He slaps out about $1,000 on the counter. He says, go take care of it. I think you know what I mean. And everybody's got their own belief system, but I'm Catholic. And I said, no, you don't have to be part of the picture. You don't have to be part of my life or the baby's life, but I'm not doing this. This is against everything I believe in. Well, for the next couple of days, he stayed gone. I don't know where he was. He was barely answering my text messages. He wanted nothing to do with me. But apparently at some point during those days, he ended up at his parents' house. And they were actually happy about the news. They were so excited to have a first grandchild. They were in tears. They were ready to buy things. They were so excited. Well, all of a sudden, he changes his mind. He wants the baby. And so he comes back. And within, I want to say, I found out I was pregnant June. By July 4th of that year, we went to a friend's party. I'd never looked at rings or anything, and he got down on one knee in front of everybody and proposed to me. But I really, at this point, I wasn't sure I wanted to marry him because, like I said, there were red flags. I had never been in an abusive relationship, but I knew something clearly wasn't right or normal. I accepted the ring, but in the back of my mind, I thought, well, but we don't have to push through with it probably till after the baby's born, and it gives me time to think and breathe and figure out what I'm going to do. And finally, by that October, I was very depressed. I ended up saying, okay, we can line up a justice of peace. I'll marry you in the apartment. So that's what we did. We got married the day before Halloween. And right after that was done with, we were supposed to go and eat out at a restaurant to celebrate. We couldn't afford a honeymoon and this and that. So we went to go eat out at a restaurant called Parents. And during that meal, he had just changed like a different person. He had gone from happy and outgoing in front of his parents and excited to be marrying me. But by the time we made it to Parents, he hated me. He didn't want to talk to me. The way I ate was disgusting. You know, he just was making me feel really awful about myself. So I didn't really eat much. I put my food into a to-go box, and we left, and we got back to the apartment. And then that was supposed to be our wedding night. I had never been married, so I assumed that things happen on the wedding night. Well, that's not how that occurred. I ended up spending my wedding night on the floor with a carton of ice cream, crying. And anyways, the next day he announces to me, don't your family, I don't want to give away my state that I'm living in, hopefully I didn't on the last podcast, but doesn't your family live in this state? I think we're going to have to move to this state because I can't stay here and marry to you and not cheat. There's too many attractive women here. There's too much temptation. I will cheat on you. I mean, look, they blow up my phone every day. So stupid me, I don't know if I had pregnancy brain or anything, did not at all take offense to that. And I'm like, okay, let's pack up and move. And so we move up here. And my mom and dad helped him find a job. He got his first job and everything, and we got a little house. It was like a little farmhouse with a barn out back. And once I got up here, the altitude change started causing issues in my pregnancy. I was supposed to have the baby end of February, and at this point, I'd say was late November, and I got hospitalized for the first time because I started going into labor. And they had me on complete bed rest. I couldn't get up and even go to the bathroom because they were scared that I would push the baby out. And so I was stuck in the hospital at this point. During this time, unbeknownst to me, he's not showing up at the hospital. I do know that. But unbeknownst to me, he has started cheating on me with a girl named Lacey that he works with. And all I can think in my mind is here I am stuck in this stupid hospital room all day long. I don't know if my baby's going to live. I don't know if everything's going to be okay. And the only person in this whole world who shows up to see me is my mom and sometimes my dad. Where is he? And he's in my car, by the way, because he still has no vehicle at this point. It's always been my car. Well, so I start confronting him about it, and then he starts showing up here and there. Well, at this point, I still don't know about this Lacey girl. I don't find that out till later on after I have the baby. But by 2 days, it was 2 days after Christmas, they let me out of the hospital. They said at this point, if you go into labor, there's a shot we can give you to develop the baby's lungs. By New Year's Eve, I went into labor, and I had the baby. And he was very sick. And so then I get out of the hospital for myself, and I'm right back in the hospital with him because he had really bad jaundice. And I don't remember, but I think it's something like kidney failure and all that other stuff goes with it. Anyways, I'm in the hospital with him full time now, sitting in the hospital with my newborn. And again, he's not showing up. He's just cruising around town and working his job and then coming home to whoever because he's not coming to see us. By the time we finally got my son healthy and got him out of the hospital, that was whenever I could start focusing on whatever the heck was going on with this guy I just married. Well, I get back, and his friends are all excited that we're back with the baby and stuff, and they're like, let's have a cookout. Come on over for the cookout, and we'll get to meet the baby, and we'll get to see Kelly, and you probably have to dub that out. And we'll do that. Well, the whole time we're at this cookout, he keeps saying this girl. I hear him talking. Where's Lacey at? She was supposed to show up. Where's Lacey at? I've texted her like 4 times, like right into my face. Clearly no respect for me. And I'm just sitting there. I don't know anyone there because they're all his coworkers. I might have met him like once or twice. And I'm hearing him basically in front of my face. He's waiting pins and needles on this girl. Anyways,
So, one question. At this point, you've seen all of this stuff. You're not being treated well. He's obviously cheating, whoever this Lacey person you're talking about. And so at this point, keeping you around is, your family. You now have a child with him. And, the belief, is it like a belief, you had your first love bombing and everything, you fell in love with him. And now is it really like the belief of a family supposed to stay together or things like that? Like you have to stick this out. This is what I'm supposed to do because you really have no frame of reference of what to do.
Well, no, because here's the deal. My mother was married before the man that I call my father. Mm-hmm. And out of that, she actually had a boy and a girl just like me. And she left him the day she went into labor with me. She just didn't stick around. He was very abusive. And so I did have some sort of reference as to I'd never personally witnessed abuse, and I didn't know step by step what abuse looked like. So at this point, I had been telling my mother everything. And so, and he didn't know that. So she's like, look, you got to divorce him. She's a paralegal by trade. I mean, she can type up divorce papers, no big deal. And I can file them myself at the courthouse. This is what we do. This is how much it's going to cost. We're going to do this. Send him back home. We will raise the baby together. And part of me, was torn. Because here I am looking at my little boy, and I'm a female, and he's going to grow up without a daddy. And it's my fault. And so I tried to hang on to it by just like confronting him about it when we got back. Hey, who's Lacey? Are you sleeping with her? What's going on kind of stuff. And he grabbed a antique mirror off, and I had the baby. I was feeding the baby in my arms. He was still very tiny at this point because he was so premature. And I asked him, and he grabs an antique mirror off of the wall and throws it at me and the baby. He didn't even answer my question, and I could have killed the baby. Thank God I jumped up, and I ran out of the house, and I called my mom. My mom and my dad showed up over there, which, again, they were fully aware of the situation. He just didn't know they were because I had been talking to my mom every day. And my daddy is an old redneck man. He had his pistol on his hip. And he was ready. And my mom comes there, she's a little Cajun woman, and she's fiery. And she was like, you don't ever throw things at my daughter. You don't put your hands on her. And she's waving her finger around in her face. And you have to imagine this. He's like 6'6", and she's like 4'10" with heels on. And she's got her finger pointed up in the air in his face. Don't you ever. And just like she would her own kid. And he rears back with his fist and goes to hit her, and my daddy jumped in between them with his pistol out and stuck it to my ex's forehead and said, if you breathe wrong, I'm going to pull this trigger, and I'm going to call it self-defense. Don't you ever try to hit my wife. And he picks his cell phone up out of his pocket because he knew my daddy wasn't going to pull that trigger. I mean, my daddy's a good man. Now, I call him daddy. He's my adoptive dad. He adopted me. He's my stepdad by blood. But anyways, he pulls his cell phone out of his pocket, and he dials 911. He says, hey, there's an old senile guy out here. He has a pistol pulled to my forehead, and I think he's going to kill me. And so guess what? The cops show up. And my mom and dad sent me inside because they always sheltered me. They sent me inside, and they somehow maneuvered the police into understanding that Daddy, didn't have the gun loaded. He didn't intend to shoot him because he was ready to put charges against my old dad. And my dad's like 16 years older than my mom. He really is old. I mean, like right now he's almost 80. at this point in time. But anyways, and that, look, here, this guy threw a mirror. Here's the mirror inside at my daughter and her newborn son. He has been attacking her and hitting her. Just go ask her this and that. So anyways, the way it worked out at the end of the night, the police helped him pack his stuff, and they went ahead and they sent him on his way, and his parents came and picked him up. And so he's out of the picture at this point. I'm by myself with a newborn. I guess he was probably, because we were in the hospital for a while, he was probably about 2 or 3 months old. He was old enough to go to daycare because immediately my mom followed through with what she said. She got that divorce filed. She got me a job where she was working as a secretary, and I was making decent money. I could actually pay my bills. I actually moved on really easy, as hard as that, and it was no contact, because the second he was gone, my mom knew what to do. She changed my phone number and everything. Anyways, everything was going fine. I'd say it was about 3 months. I didn't hear from him. And at some point, he contacted my brother, who's back down in our home state at this point, and got a hold of my phone number. And in the middle of the night, he called me. This is a funny story. He calls me up, and I'm half asleep. I was in the bed with the baby in the cradle, like the little cradle type thing next to my bed. And I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hello? Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly, can you, and I'm like, listen, old lady, I don't know who you are, but leave me alone. And I hung up the phone. Well, this old lady kept calling back. It was him. I had been away from him for so long, I had forgotten his voice. And to me, he sounded like an older lady on the phone, like an old elderly woman. And he was highly offended. But anyways, once he got me on the phone and we discovered who he was, I was like, look, leave me alone. I'll do anything to get you off of the phone with me. Let me call you tomorrow and talk to you about it. Okay, fine. I will talk to you tomorrow. Well, he did. He followed through. He started blowing up my phone first thing in the morning. And that's a technique that he used oftentimes during our relationship. He knew that if he backed me down and cornered me by blowing up my phone incessantly to the point where it would die at times, that I would eventually pick up to make it stop. Back then, I don't know if what era they started making it to where you could block phone numbers from your cell phone. But I do recall back then you actually had to call the wireless carrier. This would have been about 06 or 07, or at least to my knowledge, you had to call the wireless carrier and actually get it blocked. It wasn't something you could do from your device. I mean, we didn't even have touchscreen devices back then. I think I had a flip phone. Anyway, so it's not like I could block his number. And so he would just bombard me, until I gave in. And he somehow finagled his way into, his daddy had bought him a little Ford Focus, and he was going to come up there and we could talk this out. His son needed him. And that's one of the weak spots he knew I had. I knew that I am unaware of what to do with a baby boy other than love him. So he came up for a weekend. I never told my parents he was even there. In fact, he parked at his ex-coworker's house, and I picked him up, and I brought him to my home and spent the weekend with him like nothing had ever happened. And that went so well, I ended up going behind my parents' back, sending a letter to the judge, and no, I no longer wish to get a divorce because it wasn't finalized yet. And then packing my stuff and heading back to my home state in the middle of the night with my child without my parents even knowing. It broke their heart because here she had gotten me a job and she had done all these great things for me, and she knew how dangerous he could get. And I just did something so stupid, but I was so brainwashed by this guy. There's no way to explain it. So anyways, I get back down to Louisiana, and he's apparently living with his parents. And we have to move into a bedroom at their house, which they have a nice big house, but wasn't a big deal. And within weeks, he started his stuff with me and was gaslighting, looking on my phone and then coming up later with things that he knew about me. You're lying about this or you're lying about this, just to pick a fight, basically gaslighting. And we ended up getting into it with the door shut in the bedroom, and it was over the down comforter. I remember I was packing my stuff. I was going to leave him again, and he wanted my down comforter, which was mine. I had had it before I even knew him, and I'm like, no, give me my down comforter. And so we're like two 5-year-olds jerking this down comforter around, and he reaches back and punches me in my face and busts my nose and my lips. And so I screamed, and he calls the police. He tells the police, this girl's gone crazy. She's blah, 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 this and that, and blah, blah. Well, his parents apparently had never had the police at their house. They're upstanding people, and they look down upon that stuff. So basically the police show up, and they don't know why. They don't know how, because we've been in a shut bedroom, and he tells them, oh, this and that. When she gets anxious, she claws at herself, and that's how her nose got busted and her lip got busted. And she's just going crazy. I don't even know if she's safe to be around my child, all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there just bawling, like broken down, because I know I'm about to lose my kid. And taking his side, they're like, yeah, all these years we've had our son, we've never had the police over here. She must have called you guys. She's behind this. She's done this to herself. Well, there was a woman police officer and a man police officer, and that woman pulled me outside, and she said, honey, what really happened? Because they're not letting you get a word in. And I told her the truth, and she believed me. And so at that point, I was able to pack my bags again and go back to my home state where my parents were at. And, you know, they weren't real happy with me, but they definitely wanted me back there versus where I was at. So immediately I'm back on the road again with an infant, back up to 7.5 hours away, and I've moved back up there. Well, immediately once I get back up there, he starts calling me, blowing up my phone, this and that, and he talks me back into coming down. Look, I've got us an apartment. We won't be with my parents anymore. This was all their fault. I was under so much stress. Basically, for the first time, he wasn't blaming me. This is not you. This was them. They had me stressed out. So listen, I've got us our own place. You come back down here, and we will be together for our son. So basically, we have to plan this, too, to sneak around my mother's back, because if she's got any say in it, I'm not going anywhere. She knows what kind of man this is. And so I had to sneak behind her back, pack up my stuff again, and head back down there.
I'm sorry to interrupt you right here, but I just wanted to point out for everyone the changing tactic that was used here. And whereas before things were being blamed on you, here is a way of your partner to change the tactic and blame his parents, which for you seems like not that it's a breath of fresh air, but it takes the pressure off of you, and you might start seeing it in the sense of he's on my side, or things have changed, and things along those lines. So for everyone listening, you know, here's just like another way of a tactic that can change. It's a very subtle kind of change, but the mindset of someone who's in this might see it in an uplifting or a positive way, which keeps them there for even longer. And I'm sorry for interrupting, and please continue.
And I head back down, and sure enough, he's gotten us a 1-bedroom apartment in a really bad part of town. And immediately, right after I had my son, I got on the IUD, which stops you from having your time of the month. So I know that sounds like weird. Why would I add that? But the reason I'm saying that is because when I first walked in there, I had to go to the bathroom. I had been on the road for a while, and I look over into the trash can in the apartment, and it's filled with tampons, used ones. I mean, I know he's not using tampons, so I knew my heart fell and sank so bad right then, because I knew I had made a fool of myself again. He'd already had another woman over there. It was clear. Immediately, we fight right off the bat about that one. And so we ended up staying together because I was too embarrassed to go back to my parents. I was going to try to make it work this time. And my son loves his father. They apparently had quite a bond. believe it or not. He's growing to love him, And anyways, not too long, I want to say about 4 months after I moved in there, I started getting virus symptoms, throwing up, all the symptoms that the virus comes with. I'm like, dang, like, what's going on? Am I that unhealthy? Well, it just seemed like within hours of every time I ate, I was throwing up, and to the point where I couldn't keep liquids down or anything. It was horrible. I remember one night in specific, after a few days of it, I had left the bathroom on my hands and knees, and I started feeling sick again, and I dropped down to the ground and was throwing up, like dry heaving and throwing up onto the floor and having to drag my body because I was so weak, and no one would take me to the hospital. And he was in there in the bed with our son, and he said, could you shut that shit down? We are trying to sleep here. Do you just care about only yourself? And I'm sitting here like, I feel like I'm literally, my organs are shutting down and stuff. I don't know what's wrong, but I can't even walk. Anyways, that next day I called my mom, even though it was a very tumultuous time between us because she was very disappointed in me. And I let her know what's going on, and she says, do a favor for me. She says, anything you eat or drink, only take it from closed containers. And when I say that, I mean once you've opened it, if you set it down on the counter for 2 seconds and walk away, don't touch it again. Only from closed containers. That's it. Well, I started doing that, and immediately it stopped. Immediately. Now, I'm not trying to say he poisoned me, but it sure felt and looked that way at that point. I never had virus symptoms again after that point. It was weird having to live, off of packs of gummies and unopened string cheeses and like drinking like a quarter of a bottle of water and then not being able to drink the rest, but I was surviving. Well, one day we decided we were going to go to Walmart, and on the way to Walmart, our son had fallen asleep in the back seat, and he was driving, and I said, look, I'll just run in and grab a couple of things we need, and you can stay out here with him with the truck running, and then that way, because he had traded the Focus in for a truck at this point. Anyway, you stay here with him, and I'll just run in. All of a sudden, he starts accusing me of cheating. I've got a man in there I'm going to see, and just crazy gaslighting, and I'm like, oh, my God, why are we even going through this? I feel like I'm losing my mind. Well, when I raised my voice at him, that is whenever he told me to get out of his vehicle. Get out now. Well, I look, and he's unbuckling the baby from the back seat, too. He jerked the baby so hard out of the back seat, and he's like about a year and a half old right now at this point. He jerked him so hard, one of his little shoes came off of his feet. And he throws him at me. Here, take him. Well, he turns around, loops around the parking lot as fast as he can in a Walmart parking lot, I guess, and comes at us like he's going to hit us. Like I literally had to jump out of the way to not be hit. And I guess I got off base here. I want to add in the fact that at this point I found out that I'm pregnant again. I had an issue. The IUD had to be removed at this point, and within a month of that, I got pregnant. And he knew I was pregnant, and he was very angry about it. He did not want another child. So when he comes to hit me, I've got a child in my stomach and a child on my hip. And I jumped out of the way. Well, he leaves, and we're about 10 to 15 miles from home. And so I start walking in the heat with my baby on my hip, crying. I was crying so hard. I don't even remember. I think I couldn't even see. I had mascara all in my eyes, walking on the side of the road, trying to get home. And this little old lady in an old, 1994 Honda Civic pulls over. And she goes, honey, what's a nice little girl like you doing on the side of the road with your child? You could get hit. What are you doing? And I guess she just reminded me of family or something, because I just opened up and told her everything. I'm like, my husband threw me and my baby out of the vehicle. Then he circled around and he tried to hit us. Baby wouldn't stop crying until just a few minutes ago because it scared him so bad. I have no ride home. We're having to walk. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I'm pregnant. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And then when I get home, what's going to happen to me? I don't know. And she says, I tell you what, I'll give you a ride home, but on the one condition that you take my cell phone and you call the police, because I had no purse or cell phone or anything with me. All that still was with him. And I gave in. I had no ride home. I was maybe like a month or two pregnant. I had my baby on my hips, sweating. He's a little taut, and here he is sweating in the heat. I had no money to buy him drinks, so I called. And I felt guilty about calling the police on him, even though he had done something so horrific to me. And the police come up and they hear my story. And every time I would try to kind of corners and not tell the whole truth so we wouldn't get in as much trouble, that old lady would be like, nope, you tell him the truth, young lady. You tell him the truth. So I would have to tell him all the details. And anyways, they were like, okay, we're going to give you a ride home. So we had to ride in the back of a cop car, and we're going to arrest him. And I'm going to send one of the other officers over to Walmart because this should be on their parking lot footage. I mean, if he did it in the parking lot, it's there. And so before we could even make it back home, they had already called this officer and was like, yes, we've got it. So that night was probably the worst night ever because I was eating guilt. I knew he was going to be out of jail, and when he was, I was in for it. And I had no money. I wasn't working at this point and no way to get out of there. My escape was gone. Whenever he got back, he was so angry at me and so livid that I had followed through and called the police, that he threw me face first over a coffee table. And I was pregnant. I wasn't but 1 to 2 months, but I was still very careful of my baby. And it was so upsetting. And at this point, something I did forget to mention is he had started getting on Craigslist and replying to ads. And what's it called? It's called something. It's where you hook up with, I guess, prostitutes. Anyways, he let me know that's where he was going, and he left. And so I set up all that plan. So he had just gotten back. He had hurt me, and then he did again. And the next day he comes back like nothing ever happened. It's magical again. It's wonderful again. He's happy I'm pregnant. He loves his child. But we can't live here in this city anymore. We're going to have to move back closer to Baton Rouge because he can't live here. So we packed our stuff and we moved in. My sister's husband's mother had a rental house and she let us rent it. And so we moved into there. My brother got him a job at the place he was working. So he moved jobs. And that was that. Well, during this time, I'm growing, I'm getting bigger, this and that. I go into labor. I have my daughter. And we get back home, just to make that short and sweet. And he is working on to off three, off to that sort of schedule, like 12-hour shifts. So at this point in time, I've got an infant who doesn't sleep at all at night. She's newborn. And she sleeps during the day. And so I'm up all night with her. And then I've got a 2-year-old at this point who is up all day and asleep at night. So I'm getting no sleep. And one of the off days, I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind, can you take our son and just play with him for a little while and let me get some rest? I'll even sleep with the baby. You don't have to worry about the baby. She's sleeping anyway. She's up all night. I'll go take a nap with the baby, and you just, if you could just take care of him for a little while, that would be amazing. And he, grumbled and stuff because he didn't want to have to, do anything for me, and he was too busy texting people on his cell phone and playing on his PlayStation and whatnot. But he did it. But he was disgruntled. Well, no sooner do I lay down, I hear him telling my 2-year-old child, who's in the kitchen at this point with him, you better shut the F-U-C-K up or I'm going to. And I know this man is violent. So I know he means it. So I jump up as like if I'm going to do anything about it. I mean, all of a sudden I had all the nerve in the world to this person I never stood up to, and I ran up in there, and I had left the baby in the living room in her little thing she was sleeping in, bassinet, whatever you call them. And I went in there and I took my finger and I stuck it up in the air and I said, "Don't you ever." And before I could finish my sentence, he grabbed me up by both of my arms and threw me. And when he did, there was a glass laundry room door behind me, and I flew through it. And our 2-year-old is screaming his head off because I'm bleeding everywhere, and I'm squirting him and squirting everything else, and he's just watched something very violent. So he wraps the towel around my arm, and he gets us all in the vehicle. I ruined his truck seat, and starts to take us to the hospital. And he's telling me the whole way there, "Now, you know, when we get there, you don't tell him a word. You don't tell him a word. You fell with the coffee pot, didn't you? You were mopping the floor, and you slipped and fell with the coffee pot." Like, who mops the floor with the coffee pot in their hand, right? But apparently I do. So we get to the emergency room, and sure enough, I tell them, mopping the floor with the coffee pot in my hand, and I fell. And at this point in time, he tells me, "Look, I'm going to leave the baby with you. They're going to prepare to stitch you up and stuff. So I'm going to take our son with me, and I've got to go clean this mess up." You know, because obviously he had to cover up the evidence in case the police got involved again. And so he leaves. And that doctor was an older gentleman, and he comes to me and says, "Ma'am, I don't believe you. If you're being abused, you need to let me know. I can help you." And all I can think at this point is he has my son. I don't want to lose my son. What if he kills him while I'm here stuck in this hospital room? He's all the way back over there at the house cleaning up the mess. The police could show up. He could kill my kid. Well, I've got to protect my kid. And I'm like, no, I really was mopping with the coffee pot in my hand and slipped and fell on it. He's like, "Ma'am, coffee pots don't cause these kind of injuries. This is bad." But anyways, they let us go. I got to go home. He bribed me by buying me a few things on the way home. He would just run into the store and grab things that I had been asking for that he wouldn't buy me before, kind of stuck up to me, because he always did control our money. Like, even though I know, like, even my sister's been married almost forever, and her and her husband always have debit cards to the same account, and they're able to access it. I never had that. I was strictly to go through him for any need, and that includes gas, anything. And I was never given over $5 of gas for my tank, so I couldn't go too far because he knew I ran. Anyways, I go back home with my arm stitched up, and I know that the next day my mom is scheduled to come and meet her new granddaughter and spend time with us and help me, because the last she heard, I wasn't sleeping. My mom shows up, and I've got this huge bandage around my entire arm, and I'm trying to convince my mother that I was mopping with a coffee pot in my hand, and I slipped and I fell on it, and it somehow ripped my arm apart. And my mom said, "Don't lie to me. Tell me the truth." And the second he went back to work that day, I just fell apart. I told her everything. I mean, and I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed because here I had snuck away from her. I had done everything she told me not to, and she had saved my behind so many times, and I failed her again. And just the disappointment I knew. But she wasn't. She started crying with me. She was so heartbroken that anybody could treat her child that way. And she never said a word to him because she had learned by this point you have to work behind the scenes with this guy or he can do very bad things. So we started making plans again, but I never followed through with him. I was beat down at this point. We ended up moving from that place to another place, a townhouse, and it was next door to one of my friends. Actually, the first night that I went to the bar and I met him, that friend was living next door to me. And I was really excited about that. I had that to look forward to. And we started living there, and he was working at that place at the job my brother had gotten him. And I went one night over there to bring him lunch or something. I don't even recall what it was. I had to bring something at work. And all of his coworkers saw me. And at this point, I thought I was just like a dog. I thought I was worthless. I was nothing. But apparently they didn't feel that way. And they somehow got a hold of my phone number off of his phone. Nobody apparently at all likes him over there. And they start texting me. One guy in particular, he's like, listen, ma'am, he's got different women over here every night. So imagine my surprise when I find out you're the one that's the wife. And I see how pretty you are. Why are you putting up with this? He's like, heck, I'd take you if you let me, just like, trying to like tell me. Well, I was so upset. And he was still at work for the rest of the day, so I couldn't talk to him or anything. Because this particular job, I better not text him. That was one of his key rules. But anyway, that afternoon, I started, you know what? I'm going to start looking in every area of our life. We had a laptop at this point. This is about 2010 or so. We had a laptop, and I get on my laptop, and I start going through it. And I realized he's got an ad on Plenty of Fish. He's been picking up women left and right. I mean, it's no wonder he's got women at his job every night coming to meet up with him and hook up with him in his vehicle on his lunch break. He's got an ad out there. I've never even been familiar with dating sites at this point. And so I am fuming. I am furious. I have been made a fool of, and I'm just done. And so when he gets back, I tell him, I'm leaving you. It's over with. I have been through too much. I'm done. And he basically beat me down to the point emotionally where I backed down off of that. But I knew in my heart, okay, I know that this is over. I've just got to figure a way out. He's right. I can't just walk away with it. I have no money. I'm still not working at this point. I have no money. I have nothing. So within a week, I was already out there looking for jobs, trying to get everything lined up. I was going to do what I had to do to get on my feet and get away from this man. And I did. I found a job. And I actually started making friends, which built up my self-esteem a lot more because I was so isolated. Yeah, my friend next door was next door to me, but we barely hung out because he would control who I hung out with and stuff. But when I was at work, I was free. He couldn't control me. I had friends, and I had people I could talk to, and that was really exciting for me. So I started talking to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I've got friends now. I want to stay down here. I think maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's why I keep coming back. I want to be here around my friends. I have no friends up there. Maybe if you could just help me get on my feet and help me get a new place to live. And then one night when he's at work on one of his shifts, I'll just get some of these friends to help me move to my new place. And that's what we did. She helped me get into a cute little log cabin that was made into a duplex. And we moved out. And he was furious when he found out. And when we had left, at this point, we still had that old car that I had brand new right before we got married. And we had a newer Jeep Grand Cherokee, which I drove around most of the time because I had the family with me. I had the 2 kids, so it made sense. Well, he starts pulling up my phone. You're going to come and you're going to give me that back. That one's the one that has my name on it too. And I've got the law on my side. I'm driving around a car with your name on it. That's not fair. We're going to trade out vehicles and you've got to let me see my kids. So I expect to have a sleepover with them. So we arranged a night for us to meet up, and we were going to meet up, trade out vehicles, and he was going to get the kids for one night. And when we met up, everything seemed fine, a little too fine. Because that's not normal. He wasn't begging for me back. He wasn't anything. He just kindly swapped keys with me, and I drove off. And that was not normal. Well, within a few miles of me leaving there, I was pulled over by 2 police officers in 2 separate cars. And they start beating on my window to roll it down. And they're like, do you have drugs? Do you have drugs in this vehicle? Do you have drugs in this vehicle? And they're yelling at me in my face. And I'm like, I don't have drugs. Why? Have you been drinking? And no, I don't have any of that. They pulled me out of my car. They ripped everything out of my car. They were jerking on the seat. They were pulling everything out of, like, the glove box and throwing it into the ditch on the side. I had pulled off the side of the road on the grass with a ditch by the side. They were throwing the car seats in there, everything. They ripped my entire car apart looking for drugs. And then when they were done, they were like, okay, have a nice night, ma'am. And they left me there on the side of the road with every bit of my stuff in that ditch. And I knew then why he had been so peaceful that night. He had access to the car before me, so it was no big deal for him to say, hey, there's this blonde-headed lady in a such and such a Oldsmobile Alero. It's this model. Here's the license plate. I saw her doing drugs, or something like that, because they were treating me like I had them on me. Well, it wasn't too much longer after that before he talked me back into taking him back. He had lost the first place that we were living in, the one I had left him at, which was in my name. Thank you for the credit score, because that really hurt my credit. He had been evicted from it. He had nowhere to live. Oh, he just broke my heart with a sob story. So I took him in. I was like, okay, well, you can live here and stay on the couch. And, that's never how that works. So we ended up getting back together. And one night he got angry at me. I had this thing with work I had to go to. It was like a party to celebrate some successes we had at work, and they rented out this place, and there was dancing and music and everything else, and he didn't want to go. I just went by myself, and I hung out with my girlfriends, and we had a couple of drinks, and then I went home. Well, he accused me of cheating. He went in this whole rant. He started punching holes in the walls of this other place that I've got my name on this place too. And I'm freaking out. I'm flipping out. He grabs the Clorox. He opens my closet with all my work clothes in it, and he dumps Clorox on every item, just right across the top. I have no clothes. He ruined every piece of them. And basically, he starts throwing me up against walls. He starts just banging me around to the point where our people in the duplex, like I said, it was a log cabin duplex, next door heard it. And they called the police, and he got picked up again. So at this point, he's gone again, blah, blah, blah. I get with my mom. We type up another divorce. I'm divorcing him. He gets an attorney this time. He gets his daddy to pay for an attorney. It's a female attorney. And we get to court, and she just starts slandering my name. I'm this woman. I cheat on him constantly. I break his things. I'm horrible to him. I mistreat the kids. Everybody suffers because of me. I'm a selfish narcissist. I'm a horrible human. And I felt cornered. I couldn't afford an attorney. So I was sitting in there representing myself. And she says, I'm going to give her the opportunity to talk this out on the side. And then, she tells the judge this. And then we will meet back in 10 minutes and see what comes of it if we can't come to some kind of mutual understanding. And we get out in the hall, and he is grinning ear to ear. He's so satisfied with this. And she says, first of all, you look really familiar. Do I know you? The more I look at you, I know who you are. And I said, I don't think I do. And I've been texting my mom, and I said, what is your name? And she says, so. And I texted my mom, do we know so-and-so? And she goes, oh, yes, that's Mr. so-and-so's daughter who I worked with back in like the 80s, and she used to carry you around on her hip. You were a baby. And she realized that she's been knowing me since I was a baby. So then she felt really bad about what she had done. And that was like the first time in ever that I actually got something on him where I felt like, you're not controlling me on this one. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. Because she's like, well, I can't keep representing you. This is like, this is bad. This is family to me. Her mother is like a sister to me, blah, blah, blah. We need to work this out. And why don't we just tell the judge we'll, adjourn until another day, and we'll come back and we'll go back to my office and we'll talk this out, because, I love her family. I didn't realize this is who you were. And so we go back to her office, and basically what ends up coming out of it is we're going to work things out, and he's going to go to counseling. And he does. He goes to counseling, and he starts going. He starts behaving a lot better, too. And then one day he comes back, and he says, hey, the counselor says she's ready to meet with you too. So we're going to have like a couple counseling night. And so you're going to come with me on this date and we're going to go. Well, I get in there and he has told this counselor that I abuse him, I'm cheating on him, I neglect our children, I'm an alcoholic, I've got all these problems. So I have to leave him again. And I move in with a friend back in Baton Rouge. And long story short, again, he talks me back into coming back to him. I mean, I hate to even say it. I'm almost ashamed of it at this point. But I moved back in with him in an apartment, like right down the street from where my friend lives. And we were there for a few months. And then one night he's on one of his rants, gaslighting me again. And he tells me I better give him my daughter, blah, 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 or else. I hand over my daughter to him, and she throws up all over him. We didn't know she had a stomach virus. She had just come from daycare. And he starts yelling and screaming and breaking things and punching holes in the walls and telling me I made her throw up on him. I make everyone hate him. I ruin all of his life. He starts going crazy like I've never seen before. I mean, I've seen him get pretty crazy, but not like this. And he basically, for the next 2 hours, holds us hostage. The kids are screaming and crying on the couch, like holding themselves. I mean, in shock to where they're having to catch breath. They're screaming so hard. I'm being knocked out, drug around, and apparently the neighbors heard again, and they called the police. Well, when the police came to the door this time, apparently somebody in jail the last time had told him, if you don't answer the door, they can't do anything to you. It's when you answer the door that you let them in. So don't answer the door. And he tells me this. He says, I ain't going to answer the door. They'll just go away. So he says, everybody be real quiet. And he's like, the kids are having a hard time being quiet. I mean, they are choking. They're crying so hard. I'm half out of it. I can't see straight because I've been beaten just to a pulp. And they got the SWAT team out of it. They didn't just go away. They got the SWAT team out there. And we started hearing him announce over like a loudspeaker, open the door, blah, 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 you know, we're going to come in, blah, blah, blah. And they kicked the door in. And they come and they got us. And at this point, my little boy, I want to say he was about 3.5 at this point. 3.5, almost 4. And my little boy tells him everything. I don't even have to talk. He says, he beat my mama. He would throw her against the wall. He would mash her head into the carpet so she couldn't breathe. He would do this. He would do that. I'm so scared. Please take my daddy to jail. And they took him to jail again. So we continued living in that apartment for a little while longer. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. I had to take in a roommate to be able to afford the bills and afford daycare because, of course, he never paid child support when we were apart. I wasn't worth getting child support. So my roommate ended up having problems and not being able to pay her end of the bills, and we lost that apartment. And then at this point, I was forced to move back in with him. He was living back in his home. So he was back down there. Oh, and he was open arms, ready to take me in. So I moved back down there with him again. And no sooner do I get there than the abuse starts. We had this one instance where, and I had gotten a job down there too. I started working for a collection agency, and I really liked it. I had a lot of friends there. It was good money, good bonuses, everything else. And he hated me working there. He thought I was talking to other men, that I wasn't really going to a job. Every other night was a fight. It was like if I didn't work, he would put down on me for being lazy and never wanting to keep a job. But when I did work, I was cheating on him. So I was like, no way I'm giving up this job. I'm happy. I get to get away from home, you know. And at this point, I just have to tell you the mind frame I'm in. I have gone through this for so long and so much. I feel like nothing. I feel almost suicidal at times, especially right after he beats me. I feel like I could just kill myself and nobody would care. Like, I literally didn't want to live. He somehow always got me to come back. I felt crazy, like I was losing my mind. I had started drinking at night to make myself sleep. But anyways, around 4th of July, he starts punching holes in the wall and telling me I'm going every day to see my boyfriend, telling me to give him his name and the address. And because I have no boyfriend and I have no information to give him, his tirade gets worse and worse and worse. And my kids are in there, so I invite both my kids quietly and just like none of this is going on outside. I have my cell phone in my hand, and I bring them outside to ride on their little tricycles out back to try to get away. And I'm sitting on the back step, which has the door right behind it. So, like, if you're sitting there, the door's up against your back. That's what you're sitting up against. He busts open the door, which knocks me out on the concrete in front of my kids. And my kids are screaming in horror again at this point, just completely traumatized children. And he leaves. I got up. I got my kids in the house. I called my mom. I let her know that this was still going on. And we start making a plan for me to leave again. But this time it's permanent because of the SWAT team incident. The DA has decided that it doesn't matter how many times I call them and tell them that he's not guilty and just to let these go, and I don't wish to pursue charges. Because the kids were witness to this, the state is pursuing charges, and there's nothing I can do about it. And the DA is actually friends with my mother because, like I said, she's in the legal field. She's worked in both states, and she's been in it since the 80s. The DA has told her, listen, if you don't get your daughter out of this, they're going to take her kids from her. Now, there's a lot of things that I am, and I am not, but I am a good mom, and I would never want to lose my children. That is the one line that I draw. And so my mom's like, they're going to take your kids. You know that, right? So this time when you go, you got to go. And I'm like, okay, I will. I'm going to get my paycheck this Friday, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how he found out about this, but somehow he knew I was leaving. Because that night he came home, he scooped my son up, didn't say a word to me, and leaves. And he was gone for 4 days with my child. When I would drive by his parents' house, his vehicle wouldn't be there. I couldn't get him to disclose where he was at. The only thing I could get out of him is, oh, you thought you could leave me. Well, let's see you leave me now. And, oh, this and that. And, just tormenting me further. And around the second or third day, his sister comes by, and she says, hey, I'm here to pick up clothes for him and your son. And I looked her dead in the eye because they never took my side on anything. And I'd come over there with bruises all over me, and they would just ignore it. And I said, look at me when I tell you this. Look at every hole in every wall of this house. Look at me busted up and barely able to walk. Can you honestly tell me that you don't see that your brother has a problem? Can you not help me and tell me where my child is? And every night I was calling the police. I was calling them every night. I was bothering them. They're like, look, ma'am, there's nothing we can do about it. He's their father. If he wants to take the little boy and go to Hawaii, that's his business. So anyways, he finally agrees to come meet back up with me. I've talked to him and I've told him, look, I'll talk to you about our relationship problems. Maybe we can work this out. Please just bring our son back and we can talk about this. And so he does. He shows up the next morning and he doesn't have our son with him. And I said, where is our son? And he says, I want to know that you want to be with me forever, that you're never going to leave me again. I said, I can't say anything to you right now. I am freaking out. Have you killed him? Where is our son? And I start flipping out real bad. And apparently that upset him because he, again, took me by my purse strap, which was around my shoulder and the back of my head this time, and threw me out of the front door on my face to where it scraped it and was bleeding really bad. And I said, oh, I've got him. I can call the police now and they'll listen to me because he's injured me. So I called the police. They come over. They put him in the patrol car. They find my son sitting out in his running vehicle in the parking lot way far away where anybody could have abducted him or anything. It was like 3 apartment buildings and then the parking lot on the other side is the way that apartment was set up. Anyway, I get my son back in my arms, and the police said, look, we're going to keep him in the cop car, and we're going to allow you time to pack up. Where's your nearest family member? So I told them, okay, go there. Whatever you got to do, go there. this and that. So I start packing my stuff, and this one cop, he says, any other woman in this apartment complex would have been done the things you've been done, and she would get all these big screen TVs and all these things out of this man's house and walk door to door until she sold every one, or she'd take that baseball bat right there and take every one of them out. But she wouldn't walk away with nothing. And I'm just letting you know that we're going to stand outside the door and we'll play with your kids out here and let you finish packing. And if you feel like doing either, we didn't see a thing. That's exactly what they told me. And you know what? I started packing and I was like, I actually could. Since I'm having to leave all this stuff again, I only got enough time to pack up a diaper bag, and I'm going to have to leave with that old beat-up car again. I'm going to take out a few TVs, and I did. I walked through that house, and I took out every single flat screen TV. I busted everything I could get my hands on, and it felt great. So we got on the road, and they didn't lock him up. They didn't do anything to him, actually. They just let him go right back into the apartment. And immediately he starts blowing up my phone about the damage that I've done and how he's going to get me arrested, and I better turn around right now. And he says, you know what? No, you're too far gone now. I tell you what, this will be the last time you hear from me. And now you have to remember, this is like a 7.5, 8-hour trip between states. I've told my mom before I left that I'm meeting her at a certain point, which is like 5 hours away. And I'm in an older car, so I need my cell phone. That's the first thing he cut off was the cell phone. Then he cut off my insurance and everything else. So I basically would have to drive up to places with free Wi-Fi and get on one of those texting apps, like Text Free Now or whatever, and text my mom my location. And we had to get through that trip so that we could get to a point where we could meet up. And by the time I got to her, I had like no gas left, no money. I mean, it was horrible. But she put gas in my tank. She took care of me. And that was the very last time I left him. That was it. I was done. I never went back because the thought of losing my children was so much for me that I knew that I could never go back. It was him or them, and they come first every time. And so I did. I ended up leaving him, and that didn't stop him from finding out my newest phone number and continuing to call me. And he stalked me. He would send roses to my new job up here. He would, he's called DHR on me at least 20 times over the years. At least. It's always something new. He would call me and try to get back together with me, start blowing up my phone, and it would radiate between anger, and then it would turn back into, I love you, I can't live without you, you know you're the love of my life, and then it would turn back into, I hate you, I'm going to kill you, blah, 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 and it would keep going back and forth like that. And then he started seeing some girl, and he got her pregnant, and we had actually gotten on speaking terms at this point because he had started paying a little bit of child support as long as I was friendly with him. He calls me up one day. He says, she's pregnant. This is not what I want. You've got to call her and tell her that abortions are okay. The baby's not really alive anyway. This very thing that I have told him before, that anybody is allowed to feel any way they want to about the subject. But for me, this is I draw a line in the sand. This is how I feel about this subject. And he's going to ask me to call this poor, helpless girl and tell her that. I said, no, why don't you raise this baby right and treat her right? Blah, blah, blah. He ends up having the baby with the girl, and he ends up turning the girl on me. And then so there for about a year or two, I had to have the girl calling me every other weekend, cursing me out, threatening to hurt me and stuff because he would pump her up. And then after everything was said and done and she finally did leave him, she messages me on Facebook and says, he was beating on me, he was hurting me, he was doing all these things. I totally understood, because he's crazy and he can talk you into anything. But she's like, can you testify for me in court and all this other stuff? And at that point, I just couldn't go through it anymore. I was 2 states away, and that wasn't nearly far enough. I didn't need it. And to this day, he still does stuff, and he still stalks me, and he still does horrible things to me, but at least there's enough distance between us that I have been able to heal. Both of my children had to have counseling for the first few years we were up here. pretty in-depth counseling. They were pretty well traumatized because that's all they ever knew was that violence. I had to have counseling. But we've built a life now, and we're a lot better.
And so within your healing process, eventually, for people who are listening, you did end up in another relationship after. So people who are listening to this, listen to that one, which is on from October 12th. But in this process of healing, I guess, what were the biggest takeaways for you? And things you learned, and for other people who are going through the same things, words of wisdom or advice for them?
Well, number one, they don't change. No matter how much they try to tell you they've changed, and no matter how much they sweet talk you and tell you you're the love of their life and all this other stuff, the more times you go back, is the more times you're putting your life at risk, because you could end up dead in that situation. You could end up losing your kids. And the other thing is that when you do leave, it don't matter what he does to you. Like I said, my phone got cut off, my insurance, everything else. Keep moving forward. Don't answer his calls or the text. Don't be a fool like me and go back 20 times and file 8 divorces. Be done for your kids' sake. And just time will heal all the other stuff. Like I said, I was so broken, and so my self-esteem was so bad. I hated being alive. But time heals that, and getting away from that heals that too.
Well, Kelly, I want to thank you for being here with me today and sharing your first story, even though it's your second story of being on here. You've been through a lot through both relationships, and I'm just happy that you're in a good place. You're in a healthy relationship now, and your kids are doing well?
Yes, both of them are completely fine now. Both of them had issues when we first got done with that, and then they had to relive it again. They both had some issues that they had to work through, bedwetting, night terrors, things like that, tantrums. But with counseling, with time, they are both perfectly normal, happy, make great grades, just great kids.
Well, it's very good to hear, and I'm just happy that you're all okay. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you once again for being on the show. And for everyone else who is listening, I hope you have a good night.